My alarm blared at 6:30 a.m., dragging me from a dreamless sleep. Another day, another round of disappointments. I sighed, pushing myself out of bed and into the monotony of my morning routine. Shower, dress, breakfast. Every step felt heavy, as if the universe had draped a wet blanket over my shoulders. The shower's hot water was comforting, a brief respite from the day that lay ahead. I lingered, savoring the warmth before reluctantly stepping out and wrapping myself in a towel. My reflection in the mirror showed a tired woman with dark circles under her eyes, her hair still damp and tousled. I brushed it into submission, applied minimal makeup, and dressed in my usual office attire, a plain blouse and slacks. Breakfast was a solitary affair. I sat at my small kitchen table, sipping on weak coffee and nibbling on a piece of toast. The toast was burnt, as usual. I had a habit of getting distracted and forgetting about it until it was too late. As I chewed mechanically, my mind drifted to the day's agenda: filing, answering emails, scheduling meetings. The same tasks I had done yesterday and the day before that. My job as an administrative assistant at a small insurance firm was hardly inspiring. The tasks were mundane, the people uninspiring, and my mistakes, though minor, seemed to pile up like a mountain in my mind. The bus ride to work was uneventful. I stared out the window, watching the city pass by in a blur of gray and brown. The streets were filled with people, all seemingly moving with purpose, unlike me. I felt like an outsider looking in, disconnected from the hustle and bustle of the world around me. When I arrived at the office, I was greeted by the usual hum of activity. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, voices murmuring. I made my way to my desk, nodding politely to my coworkers. They were friendly enough, but I always felt like I was on the periphery, never quite part of the group. As I settled in, my phone rang. It was Mr. Green, my boss. "Margaret, can you come to my office for a moment?" His tone was neutral, but I felt a pang of anxiety nonetheless. "Of course, Mr. Green. I'll be right there," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I walked to his office, my stomach knotting with worry. Mr. Green was a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a perpetually serious expression. He was fair but firm, and I always felt like I was falling short of his expectations. "Margaret, you forgot to file these documents again," he said with a sigh, handing me a stack of papers. His tone was more exasperated than angry, but it still stung. "I'm sorry, Mr. Green. I'll take care of it right away," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. He nodded, his eyes softening slightly. "I know you will. Just try to be more careful, all right?" "Yes, sir. I'll do better," I promised, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. I returned to my desk, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on me. I filed the documents meticulously, double-checking each one to ensure there were no mistakes. Despite my efforts, a sense of inadequacy lingered, gnawing at my confidence. Lunchtime was a lonely affair. I sat in the break room, nibbling on a sad sandwich and pretending to read a book. The other employees chatted and laughed, their conversations a stark contrast to my solitude. I wished I could join them, but the words always got stuck in my throat. As I stared at the pages of my book, I'd overheard a conversation between two of my colleagues, Emily and Josh. "Did you hear about the new project coming up?" Emily asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Yeah, sounds like a great opportunity." "I hope I get to be part of the team," Josh replied, his enthusiasm palpable. I sighed inwardly, knowing I would never be considered for something like that. My role was to support, not to lead or innovate. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but one I had grown accustomed to. The end of the workday was a relief, though it meant returning to my tiny, cluttered apartment. I spent my evenings watching TV or mindlessly scrolling through social media, envying the lives of people I barely knew. They seemed so happy, so fulfilled, while I felt like I was stuck in a loop of perpetual failure. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to change. I just didn't know what or how. The next morning, I followed my usual path through the park to the bus stop. It was a cold, gray day, the kind that matched my mood perfectly. The trees were bare, their skeletal branches reaching out against the overcast sky. I walked with my head down, lost in thought, when something shiny caught my eye. I bent down and picked up a sleek smartphone, its screen cracked but still functional. I turned it on, hoping to find some information about the owner. The lock screen displayed a picture of a young man with a warm smile, sitting in a wheelchair. His name, Amir, was written in elegant script beneath the image. The phone buzzed in my hand, displaying a missed call from Mom. Without thinking too much about it, I decided to find Amir and return his phone. It seemed like the right thing to do, a small act of kindness that might break the monotony of my routine. Using the phone's contacts, I called his mother. After a few rings, a warm, concerned voice answered. "Hello, who is this?" she asked. "Hi, my name is Margaret. I found this phone in the park and I'm trying to return it to Amir," I explained. "Oh, thank goodness. We've been looking everywhere for it. Can you meet us at the cafe on Elm Street this evening?" she asked, relief evident in her voice. "Of course I'll be there," I replied, feeling a small sense of accomplishment. That evening, I arrived at the cafe a little early. It was a cozy place with soft lighting and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. I ordered a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the world go by. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one stretching longer than the last. When the door finally opened, I spotted Amir immediately. He was sitting in a wheelchair, just as in the photo, his warm smile lighting up his face. He rolled over to my table, accompanied by a woman who must have been his mother. "Hi, you must be Margaret. I'm Amir," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you so much for finding my phone." "It was no problem," I replied, handing it over. "I was glad to help." "Please, sit down. Let me buy you a coffee as a thank you," Amir offered. I hesitated but then sat down. Amir's mother, Aisha, gave me a grateful smile before excusing herself to another table, giving us some space. "So, how did you find my phone?" Amir asked, signaling the waiter. "It was on the ground in the park, near the benches." "I saw the screen light up and decided to see if I could return it to the owner," I explained. "Well, I'm really grateful. Losing it was a nightmare." "It has everything I need on it," Amir said, shaking his head slightly. "I'm lucky you found it and were kind enough to return it. It's really no big deal. Anyone would have done the same," I said, downplaying my actions. "I'm not so sure about that," Amir replied, his eyes twinkling with gratitude. "Most people are too caught up in their own lives to bother." We continued talking, and I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't in a long time. Amir was easy to talk to, his positivity infectious. He told me about his life, his friends, and his hobbies. Despite his physical limitations, he seemed to have a zest for life that I envied. "You know, we have a tradition," Amir said, leaning in slightly. "My friends and I spend a weekend in the country every few months. It's a way to escape the city and just enjoy life. Would you like to join us this weekend? It would be a great way to meet some new people and relax." My immediate reaction was to decline. I barely knew him, and it felt too spontaneous. But something in his eyes made me reconsider. Maybe this was the change I needed. "I'll think about it," I said, surprising myself. "Great, I'll send you the details. No pressure, but I think you'd really enjoy it," Amir said, his smile widening. As we parted ways, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The thought of spending a weekend with strangers was daunting, but Amir's warmth and enthusiasm were hard to resist. Maybe this was the change I needed, a step out of my comfort zone and into a world of new possibilities. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Amir and his invitation. The monotony of my life had become a prison, and this felt like a chance to break free. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. Friday evening arrived faster than I expected. As I stood in front of my mirror, I questioned my decision to join Amir and his friends for the weekend. My reflection showed a woman dressed casually but neatly, her face a mask of uncertainty. "You can do this," I whispered to myself, grabbing my bag and heading out the door. The drive to the country house was beautiful, the cityscape gradually giving way to rolling hills and lush greenery. Amir had picked me up, and we chatted easily, the conversation flowing as naturally as it had in the cafe. He was a careful driver, and the journey felt safe and serene. "So, what made you decide to come?" Amir asked, glancing over at me with a curious smile. "I don't know, really," I admitted. "I guess I just needed a change. My life has been, well, it's been pretty dull." "I'm glad you did. It's going to be a fun weekend," he said reassuringly. My friends are great. I think you'll like them. When we arrived, I was greeted by a group of smiling faces. They welcomed me with open arms, making me feel more at ease than I had in a long time. The house itself was charming, surrounded by nature and filled with warmth. It was a large, rustic place with wooden beams and a stone fireplace, the kind of house you see in magazines about country living. "Margaret, this is Sam," Amir said, introducing me to a spirited woman with paint smudges on her hands. "She's our resident artist." "Hi, Margaret. It's so nice to meet you," Sam said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I've been working on a new piece. Maybe you'd like to see it later." "I'd love to," I replied, feeling a genuine smile spread across my face. "And this is Lisa." Amir continued, gesturing to a bubbly woman with a guitar slung over her shoulder. "She's the musician in the group." "Hey, Margaret. Welcome to our little getaway," Lisa said, her smile as bright as her personality. "We were just about to start a jam session. You play any instruments?" "Not really," I admitted, feeling a bit out of place. "No worries. You can join in by clapping along or just enjoying the music," Lisa said, her warmth putting me at ease. "And over there is Ben," Amir said, pointing to a tech-savvy guy setting up some gadgets. "He's the brains behind our movie nights." "Hi, Margaret. If you need any tech help, I'm your guy," Ben said with a wink. As the evening progressed, we gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories and laughter. The worries that had weighed me down for so long seemed to dissipate in the crackling flames. "So, Margaret, what do you do?" Sam asked, genuinely interested. "I'm an administrative assistant at an insurance firm," I said, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. "That sounds like a tough job," Sam said sympathetically. "But I bet you're really good at it." "Yeah, I suppose," I replied, feeling a warmth in her encouragement that I hadn't felt in a long time. Lisa strummed her guitar, playing a soft melody that seemed to wrap around us like a warm blanket. Ben joined in with some light percussion, and soon we were all singing along to familiar songs. I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in years. These people, despite their own challenges, exuded a joy that was infectious. It was a stark contrast to my usual environment, and I found myself wondering if I had been the one holding myself back all along. Later that night, Amir and I sat by the lake, watching the moonlight dance on the water. "How are you feeling about the weekend so far?" he asked, his voice gentle. "It's been amazing," I admitted. "I can't remember the last time I felt this happy." "I'm glad," Amir said, his smile evident even in the dim light. "You deserve it." "Thank you," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. "Thank you for inviting me." "Hey, we're all friends here," Amir said, his tone reassuring. "And friends look out for each other." That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in years. The country house, the laughter, the warmth of new friends, it all felt like a dream. I wasn't just existing. I was living, experiencing joy and connection in a way I hadn't thought possible. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive. The next day dawned with a brilliance that matched my newfound optimism. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the rustic interior of the country house. I stretched, feeling an unfamiliar lightness in my limbs, and got dressed quickly, eager to embrace whatever the day had in store. As I made my way downstairs, I could hear the sounds of laughter and the clinking of dishes. The kitchen was a hive of activity, with everyone pitching in to make breakfast. Sam was flipping pancakes with a flourish, while Lisa brewed coffee and hummed a cheerful tune. "Good morning, Margaret," Sam greeted me with a wide smile. "Did you sleep well?" "I did, thanks." "This place is amazing," I replied, feeling genuinely happy. "Great, grab a plate and join us," Lisa said, waving me over. "We've got pancakes, eggs, bacon, the works." As we sat around the large wooden table, the conversation flowed easily. We talked about everything from favorite books to travel dreams, each story weaving us closer together. I found myself opening up about my life, sharing things I had never told anyone else. "You know, I've always wanted to travel more, but I've been too scared to actually do it," I confessed, feeling a bit vulnerable. "Fear can be paralyzing," Amuna said thoughtfully, pouring syrup over his pancakes. "But taking that first step is the hardest part. After that, it gets easier." "Yeah, it's all about small victories," Ben added. "Like today, we're going on a hike. It's not Mount Everest, but it's a start." After breakfast, we prepared for the hike. The trail wound through the woods, the air fresh and invigorating. Sam and Lisa walked ahead, chatting animatedly about art and music, while Ben brought up the rear, stopping occasionally to take photos of the scenery. "Do you hike often?" I asked Amu as we walked side by side. "Whenever I get the chance," he replied, smiling. "Nature has a way of putting things into perspective. Plus, it's great exercise." The hike was challenging but exhilarating. The path was uneven, with rocks and roots jutting out, but Amu navigated it with ease, his wheelchair specially designed for off-road adventures. His determination and spirit were inspiring, and I found myself pushing through my own discomfort, matching his pace. We reached a clearing with a stunning view of the valley below. The sight took my breath away, and I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me. "This is incredible," I said, turning to Amu. "It really is," he agreed, his eyes reflecting the same awe I felt. Moments like these remind me why I love the outdoors. We spent a while there, soaking in the beauty and tranquility of the place. Sam and Lisa broke out some snacks, and we sat together, chatting and laughing as if we'd known each other for years. "So, Margaret," Ben said, leaning back on his hands, "what's one thing you've always wanted to do but never had the chance?" I thought for a moment, considering my answer carefully. "I've always wanted to learn how to paint," I admitted, "but I never thought I'd be any good at it." "You should totally try it," Sam said enthusiastically. "I can show you some basics later if you'd like." "I'd love that," I replied, feeling a spark of excitement. The rest of the day was filled with activities I never imagined I would enjoy. Sam and Lisa showed me how to paint, their enthusiasm turning my awkward strokes into something resembling art. Ben introduced me to some tech gadgets, his excitement making the experience fun and engaging. Throughout it all, Amu was by my side, his presence a steady source of encouragement. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the bonfire once more. The flames danced in the twilight, casting a warm glow over our faces. Lisa strummed her guitar, playing a soft melody that seemed to wrap around us like a comforting embrace. "Life is what you make of it," Amu said, his voice thoughtful. "We all have our challenges, but it's how we face them that defines us." His words struck a chord deep within me. I had spent so long seeing myself as a failure, focusing on every mistake and misstep. But here, surrounded by people who embraced life despite their limitations, I began to see things differently. "Thank you," I said quietly, my eyes meeting Amu's. "Thank you for inviting me. This weekend has been transformative." "I'm glad," he replied, his smile warm and genuine. "You deserve to be happy, Margaret. We all do." That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a profound sense of peace. I wasn't just existing. I was living, experiencing joy and connection in a way I hadn't thought possible. The weekend had opened my eyes to a new perspective, one where my failures didn't define me, and where every moment was an opportunity to find happiness. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive, ready to face whatever the future held with a newfound strength and optimism. Sunday morning arrived with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of birds singing outside the window. The weekend had flown by, and as I sat up in bed, I felt a mixture of sadness and anticipation. The sadness came from knowing this wonderful weekend was coming to an end, but the anticipation came from the changes I felt stirring within me. I dressed quickly and headed downstairs, where the group was already gathered around the breakfast table. The conversation was lively, filled with laughter and easy banter. I joined them, feeling more at ease and connected than I had in a long time. "Morning, Margaret," Amir greeted me with a warm smile. "How did you sleep?" "Great, thanks," I replied, taking a seat next to him. "I can't believe the weekend is almost over." "Time flies when you're having fun," Lisa said, pouring herself another cup of coffee. "But we still have a few hours before we need to pack up. Any last requests?" "I was thinking we could take a walk down to the lake," Sam suggested. "It's so peaceful down there." "Sounds perfect," I agreed, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. We spent the morning at the lake, the water reflecting the clear blue sky like a mirror. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, sharing hopes for the future. For the first time, I found myself speaking about my goals with a sense of possibility rather than doubt. "I've decided I'm going to sign up for that painting class," I said, looking at Sam. "You've inspired me." That's fantastic, Margaret, Sam exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. You're going to love it. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about expressing yourself and having fun. As we walked back to the house, Amir fell into step beside me. I'm proud of you, Margaret. You've come a long way in just a few days. Thanks, Amir, I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. I owe a lot of it to you and everyone here. You've shown me a different way to look at life. That's what friends are for, he replied with a smile. To lift each other up and remind us of our potential. We spent the afternoon packing up and tidying the house, the sense of camaraderie making the task feel less like a chore and more like a shared adventure. By the time we were ready to leave, I felt a deep connection to each of them, as if we had been friends for years rather than just a weekend. As we loaded the last of the bags into the car, Lisa turned to me with a mischievous grin. So, Margaret, when are we going to see you again? Hopefully soon, I replied, genuinely meaning it. This weekend has been amazing and I'd love to do it again. Good, she said, giving me a quick hug. You're part of the family now. The drive back to the city was filled with comfortable silence, both Amir and I lost in our thoughts. I stared out the window, watching the countryside gradually morph into urban sprawl, feeling a sense of contentment I hadn't experienced in years. As we reached my apartment, Amir helped me with my bags. Thank you, Amir, I said, turning to face him. For everything. This weekend has changed my life. It was our pleasure, he replied warmly. Remember, Margaret, life is what you make of it. Embrace the changes and keep moving forward. I will, I promised, feeling a newfound determination. Back in my apartment, I unpacked my bags with a sense of purpose. I rearranged my furniture, making the space feel more open and inviting. I cleared out old clutter, letting go of things that no longer served me. It felt symbolic, like I was making room for new experiences and opportunities. The next morning, I arrived at work with a spring in my step. I greeted my coworkers with genuine warmth, surprising them and myself. I tackled my tasks with a newfound efficiency, determined to prove to myself that I was capable and competent. During lunch, Emily and Josh approached me, their curiosity evident. Margaret, you seem different today, Emily said. Did something happen over the weekend? I went on a trip with some new friends, I explained, feeling a smile tug at my lips. It was eye-opening. Sounds interesting, Josh said, intrigued. What did you do? I shared some highlights of the weekend, focusing on the joy and camaraderie I had experienced. As I spoke, I noticed that Emily and Josh were genuinely interested, their expressions softening with empathy. That sounds amazing, Margaret, Emily said sincerely. Maybe we could all do something like that sometime. It might be nice to get out of the city and just relax. I'd love that, I replied, feeling a sense of possibility open up. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to embrace the changes in my life. I signed up for the painting class, and true to Sam's words, I found joy in expressing myself through art. I reconnected with old friends and made an effort to be more social, finding that I enjoyed the company of others more than I had realized. My perspective on life has shifted. Instead of focusing on my failures, I began to celebrate my successes, no matter how small. I learned to be kinder to myself, to acknowledge my strengths and work on my weaknesses without letting them define me. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, painting and listening to music, I received a text from Amir. It was a simple message, but it filled me with warmth and gratitude. Hey Margaret, just wanted to check in. How's everything going? I smiled as I typed my response. Hi Amir, things are going great. Thanks again for everything. Hope to see you soon. As I set my phone down and picked up my paintbrush, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had embraced change, and in doing so, I had found a new sense of purpose and happiness. My life was no longer defined by failure, but by the potential for joy and growth. And I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning of my journey.